it up. We can switch it up. Switch it up like it's about to go up. Break them like internet. Goofies run up. We leave them in the dead.
You say, okay, I have a lot of money, but you have no money unless you take profits.
When the first ever spot ETF was created for gold 10x.
And the only thing I really knew was Bitcoin at the time, so I just invested very heavily into that. Rode it all the way up.
What's up?
My name is Jeff. Even the creators have said it's going to be the predecessor of CBDC.
What that taught me was that I need to be self-sufficient.
A solid DCA investment strategy, and pretend the red sell button doesn't even exist.
We about to go up like.
And you are muted.
And here we go. All right. I guess my hotkeys aren't working again tonight. All right. We got RFK Jr. in the news. He's going to be leading our head stories tonight. RFK Jr. vows to back the U.S. dollar with Bitcoin and exempt Bitcoin from taxes. Quoting specifically from RFK Jr., backing dollars and U.S. debt obligations with hard assets could help restore strength in the dollar. All right. We're also going to be talking on 2 new pieces of crypto legislation that are making their way through the halls of Congress this week. And last but not least, we're going to finish it out with the Federal Reserve officially launching its FedNow instant payment service this week. Welcome to the show, guys. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Nothing we're going to tell you guys on this channel tonight should be considered financial advice. This is strictly just financial entertainment purposes. With that, I want to welcome the panel. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We got Agent J in the house. We got Brendan. We got Will. And we got the one and only Mr. Nate. Thank you guys so much for being here. As we do with all episodes, Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy. Let's go ahead and get into some TA. And, yeah, man, let's rock and roll.
Yeah, for sure. Give me 1 second here, guys. Let me share my screen. All right, let me know. Let me know if you guys can see that okay.
Yeah, man, we're good to go.
Good. Awesome. So we are currently day number 38 of the current 60-day cycle. And it might seem a little bit repetitive, but the reality is for the past 3 weeks or so, Bitcoin has been doing absolutely nothing. Just crabbing sideways. We did make a push here, right, on day 28 of the cycle. To crack that cycle high of 31,716. But aside from that little bit of excitement, like I said, Bitcoin has been pretty much crabbing. I spoke about this with the guys a few days ago, and it seems like the cryptocurrency market as a whole is waiting on Chair Powell to basically make a move, right? We have the next federal meeting. I believe it's on the 24th and the 26th of this month, which is next week. And so I think the market is primed to make a move then. And after the meeting, we're going to find out whether Chair Powell has decided to either leave the rates as they are or they raise it 25 basis points. And after that has been finalized, then we'll find out exactly what Bitcoin and the rest of the market wants to do during the latter half of this cycle. Are we going to go up? Or are we going to head down? Let's go ahead and cover both scenarios. I know that people want some excitement out of this market, but for me personally, when we see this crabbing action going on, that just means more time for me to DCA, right? And so I actually don't mind a little bit of time spent crabbing this way. And the good thing about this is we are closer to our cycle high than we are now, right? And so even though I would really like Bitcoin to close this week out above like 30,500, as close to that $31,000 mark as possible. The fact that we're not too far off from our cycle high is actually a pretty good sign, right? Which means even if we do get some bearish news over the next week, right? If Chair Powell says, "Hey guys, I'm actually going to raise the rates because I want to fast track this inflation down to 2% as fast as possible," I can see Bitcoin heading down to probably around this this 29,700 level, right? If you can see, it's been threading this $30,000 mark for quite a while. So this our last cycle high over here at 29,800 is going to serve as support. And then you also see that we're also kind of riding this the bottom of the Bollinger Bands here. So if we do head down next week, I could see this serving as pretty strong support. But if you guys can see here, the Bollinger Bands are pinching the price of Bitcoin, right? It's kind of like whenever this happens here, I expect the market, whenever we get any significant bullish or bearish news, you're going to get some crazy volatility here, right? Imagine that this is like a rubber band and it's being pulled apart, right? But in this case, it's the bands are pushing Bitcoin into a corner. And whenever you see this happen, where the top and the bottom of the bands are pushing against the price of Bitcoin, you can expect some serious volatility is probably going to be underway, right? If we do manage to crack below that 29,800 level, the next level of support I expect us to head down to is probably going to be around here, right? It's probably going to be around here at 28,300. If you could see the tops of these candles here, we have quite a bit of prior price action going on at this price level. So if we do head downwards further, if we get any more bearish news next week, aside from a potential 25-point increase, then I can see this 28,500 level serving as pretty strong support, right? And even if we do head down, I don't see Bitcoin heading down much lower. If you can see, throughout the majority of this year, every single time that we have tested this long-term trend line, it's been respected. So even if we do drop lower than 28,500, I really don't see us going anywhere past this trend line. I don't see us breaking this trend line whatsoever, right? It's respected this trend line for the overwhelming majority of this year, and I don't see us closing below it, right? We might have a wick or two below, but I don't see us closing below it. If we actually zoom out and take a look at the weekly chart for Bitcoin, you can see that we're spending. I know that people they always tend to panic whenever we crack below 30,000, but this is why we always encourage to zoom out every single time that you possibly can, right? Whenever you're looking at the charts, because if you can see here that sure, Bitcoin might be hanging around this 30,000 price area, but you can see that it's hanging well above this 20-week moving average, right? It's not even close to its 20-week moving average. And whenever Bitcoin is above its 20-week moving average, right, it's usually a sign of bullishness, right? And here's another thing. If we were to head down, it's so much clearer when you zoom out. You can see the top of these candles, right? That $28,000 area, 28,500 area is going to serve as pretty strong support. And even if we head down further, you can see that the 20-week moving average for Bitcoin is around 28,170. And so that's going to serve as pretty strong support, right? So we have a confluence of variables already telling us that if we do get bearish news next week, that we're probably going to find pretty good support at around that $28,100 to $28,500 area, right? Also, you can see that it's pretty close to that trend line. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a bigger time scale. Let's look at the monthly. Where are we on the monthly? And look at that. Bitcoin, even on the monthly, is on that 20-month moving average. And here's another cool thing, right? I know we're coming up close to the end of this month. If we can close this month at, let's see, where we opened. Where do we open this month on Bitcoin? We open at 30,488. We're not too far from there. If we can manage to close the month above that, man, I expect some fireworks come August for sure, which is great because it's my birthday. So as far as the upside, right? If we do get Chair Powell saying that, hey, we're gonna go ahead and keep the rates where they are, our price targets really haven't changed, right? I expect Bitcoin to move upwards towards that $36,000 area, but expect a little bit of resistance. Expect a little bit of resistance around 3,000, I would say 3,300, right? If you check out this purple band of support that of resistance that I've drawn here, right? That 30,000, that 33,300 area lines up with some of the bottoms of these candles here, right? This was during 2021. Right, so I expect if we're going to get resistance on the way up, we're probably going to find it around that price area, 33,300. Right, but that's only a short stop on the way to 36K. So the price targets for upside haven't really changed. Let's go ahead and take a look at Ethereum. So for Ethereum, doesn't look that much different, to be quite honest with you. It's riding the bottom of this 20-day moving average here. And if we get some downside, I don't expect Ethereum to come down any lower than around here, $1,673. All right, the reason why I have this purple band of support drawn around here is because these cycle high here back in September of 2022, the cycle high here in November of 2022, and then our cycle high here in February of 23, they're going to serve as support if Ethereum does head downwards. Right? It's also going to try and use the bottom of this Bollinger Band as support. So if we get a little bit of downwards price action, right, some bearishness during the next week, we're probably going to head downwards to about $1,800. But I don't expect any... I don't expect Ethereum to go anywhere lower than around 1,671, right? The same thing as Bitcoin. If you can see here, during the whole of this year, Ethereum has respected this long-term upwards trend line that has been forming ever since November of last year. Okay, so unless this pattern changes, I'm going to assume that any downwards price movement will respect this trend line. Okay, and in terms of the upside, unlike Bitcoin, Ethereum has only been able to regain the past cycle high of 2020, right? And so for Ethereum to get a little bit more bullish, I need to see it close or reclaim this cycle high from April of 2,140. Right, so for Ethereum, in order to get really, really bullish, I need to see it reclaim this cycle high from April. But same story as Bitcoin. Even if we get any downwards price movement because of a Fed increase next week, I don't expect this market to head down considerably past 1,675. Probably not going to happen, right? It's probably going to respect this trend line. And we're probably not going to break past 1,700, right? That's just how I'm seeing the market right now. Cryptocurrency as a whole, the crypto market as a whole, has been racking up a considerable amount of W's over the past few weeks, and so we've got quite a bit of cushion underneath us, right? Even if we do get a 25-point increase over the next week, so I think we're more bullish than we are bearish, and any headwind that we are going to receive over the next week or so is not going to depress the market too much, to be quite honest. That's what I have for the TA for Bitcoin and Ethereum this week. Fellas, do you have any comments or anything that you'd like to add?
What do you think is going to happen with the FOMC? What's your gut telling you? You think they're going to raise rates? Do you think they're going to keep them the same? What are you thinking?
My gut is telling me that I think it's all misdirection. CME is priced in a greater than 90% chance that we are going to get a 25-point increase. I usually don't bet against the CME, but like I mentioned earlier, crypto has been racking up wins over the past few weeks, and not just crypto, man, but the overall markets as a whole. Right, inflation has gone down almost a full percentage point during the past two CPI releases. Job reports have been pretty positive. And despite the job reports being positive, the inflation numbers are still going down. I know Brendan. Wow, my fob came out. Brendan. I know Brendan has some comments about core CPI possibly affecting this decision, and I'll leave that to him to go over. But I think it's a misdirection, man. I think pricing in 90%. I think Fed Powell is going to hold it, right? Why introduce any more pain into the market when what you want to happen has been happening for the past 2 months or the past 2 reports, right? Some people are going to argue, well, you know what? I think you should just rip the Band-Aid off, right? Give us a 25-point increase now. Some people might say, give us a 50-point increase now, because he said he has two more rate hikes in the chamber. But I mean, people have been arguing for ripping the Band-Aid off ever since the Fed started increasing the rates. But he's like, no, I'm gonna do it slow and steady. And so I think Jay Powell, he's pretty much adopted a very conservative approach, right? He doesn't want to introduce too much panic into the markets, which is pretty responsible. And I think he's going to maintain the course, right? Like I said, with Bitcoin and Ethereum, unless the pattern is broken, I'm not going to assume otherwise. Right, so that's my take on it. Brendan, could you elaborate? Maybe I know we talked about the core CPI and how that might affect the decision. I was wondering if you can maybe speak on that a little bit, brother.
Yeah, I can. Jay, I think your insights are great as always. Thank you for the TA aspect. You know, no matter how much I do myself, just really like to hear other people, and honestly, you're one of the best at it. So I props to you. But when it comes to inflation, I disagree with you a little bit. And specifically because you said the core CPI numbers are still very high. You know, overall inflation was 3%, which sounds great. You know, if the numbers are correct, right? We know that they have been sort of cooking the numbers and changing how they calculate the numbers over the past year. And therefore, if you had ran these same numbers, same inflation numbers before their changes, they would come out a lot higher, or not a lot higher, but significantly higher. And then there's core inflation. So CPI takes in all of inflation. Now, core inflation excludes food and energy costs because they consider them to be much higher, much more increased volatility. So those are removed. And then they calculate what they call the core inflation with those out of it. And now the core inflation last month was 4.8%, which is still quite high. And therefore, if food and energy are unpredictable in nature, you know, say in 3 months they go back up, then we're sitting again at an inflation number of 5 or more percent. And so that's why I think when the core inflation is sticky, there's still cause for concern. And that's why I said at the last meeting, even though they paused it, I thought, even though everyone was saying 90% they were going to pause again, I was saying no. I said right away, I think they're going to raise another 0.25. And I thought there was a good argument to raise a 0.25 in the last one. Not that I was against the pause, to be honest with you, because I think the longer you wait to make a decision, all you're doing is giving yourself an opportunity to have more information. And I do believe that the more information you have, the better of a decision that they can make. But to me personally, the core CPI numbers are still sticky and they're a little bit worrisome. And if we don't drive those down faster, we're going to have a really hard time controlling inflation, especially if food and energy costs go up again. You know, it just takes one little mishap in the world. You know, we still have a war in Russia and Ukraine. You know, to drive those costs up. So I'm still a little worried about inflation personally. And even though we've started to see it come down, I think that's great. But again, the core inflation numbers are something that we still need to keep an eye on.
What's interesting is, you know, they say that inflation's coming down, but I mean, I went to the grocery store today and prices are still up. I'm definitely still paying more for the food that I'm purchasing a year ago. And I stick with the same thing pretty much every week. So I don't know where they're cooking these numbers. I don't know how we got a number of 3%, to be honest with you. Can anybody truthfully tell me that the number is 3% right now? Can anybody? Come off of mute, anybody. Please try to be a devil's advocate. And yeah, Brendan, what do you have?
It's 3% from up 10% a year ago. So we're only up 3% from what was inflation 10% a year ago. Okay? So think about that. Okay? A year ago, inflation was up 10%, 9%. Okay? I'm averaging up a little higher. But say it was 8 or 9% a year ago. We are just basically saying, okay, we're 3% up from last year, which was 9% up from the year prior. So what numbers are we really looking at? They used to take CPI numbers from a 2-year scale. Now they're saying, no, let's just do it over a 1 year. And so, okay, yeah, we're up 3% over the highest inflation numbers we've seen in decades. So yeah, okay, we're up it's only 3% higher than, the highest inflation numbers we've seen. So look, it's just the way for them to be able to adjust the numbers. Now, personally, where I live, inflation last month was still up 9.6%. So not only, it's not everywhere in the country that are seeing reprieves. Josh, I know you're in an area that might be higher, and it's hard when we're taking a number from a national average and trying to put it into our little area. Personally, actually, I looked at one item, okay, bacon. My favorite type of bacon is Oscar Mayer bacon. It's been $9.99 since inflation went up a lot. I went there a week ago, this past week, to the grocery store. It was $8.69 without a sale. That was just the price. Now it's back up to $9.29. So I don't really know why these prices are changing on a week-to-week basis, but it held steady for almost a year at $9.99. So I don't know if that means we're going to start seeing some real change. But again, we're 3% up from our high.
No, that's true. They really do cook those numbers too. Like the way, like you have to think about what it is that they're doing, right? Quite frankly, no matter what it is they do, they know that people are going to get mad, right? So they try and make it kind of like, instead of ripping the Band-Aid off quickly, they try and take it off as slow as possible, right? So what ends up happening is they very slowly, kind of like boiling a frog, right? Just slowly turn up that heat. That's ultimately what they're doing, because they don't want to piss people off. And if they piss people off, then they got problems. And so they're going to sit there and be like, no, it's not really, like up 15%, right? And you're really feeling it. No, it's actually only 3%. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Here, we moved these numbers around and just told you what the numbers are instead of actually telling you how we got those numbers. It's just what they do, man. They're just trying to make people feel better, right?
Good insight. Let's go ahead and transition into the first story that we have. Give me one quick second here. All right. So JFK Jr. vows to back the dollar with Bitcoin and exempt Bitcoin from taxes. If you guys want to take a look at this article is brought to us by CoinDesk. It's in the description below. Hit that description and go down and hit under tonight's articles, and it's article number 1. All right. The article goes on to say that U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. unveils a plan to exempt Bitcoin from capital gains tax when it is converted into U.S. dollars, and to begin to back the greenback with real finite assets such as gold, silver, platinum, and Bitcoin. Speaking at the Heal to Divide PAC Thursday, he also echoed comments he made at the conference in May, defending the right to self-custody Bitcoin, run Bitcoin nodes at home, and promise industry-neutral energy regulation. Jay, I want to bring you in here. This article, it stuck out to you. I want to know what your initial thoughts are. And it seems that a lot of the newcomers, you have Vivek Ramaswamy, you have RFK Jr., two, newer folks that are into the presidential, running for presidential office. They seem to be taking a strong stance on Bitcoin as opposed to the establishment candidates that we have. What's the tone that you're seeing with this? And if you could just speak on that for a minute.
Yeah, it's funny because the more that I hear from RFK, the more that I like him. The initial response that I had from him was the fact that you have quite a bit of people from both the left and the right that have a visceral dislike of him. It immediately kind of turns a light bulb on in my head telling me you should probably pay attention to this guy, right? Because back in 2016, I think we all know who the guy was that kind of got a very similar reaction from both the left and the right, and that was Donald Trump. Now, I'm not saying that RFK is going to do exactly the same thing that Donald Trump did in 2016, which was completely upset the whole nation by winning the US presidency. But it that that point in time really brought it to my attention that whenever somebody comes out like this and he is getting heat from all over the place, he's probably somebody that you need to pay attention to, right? At the very least, keep an eye on, right? And listen to what he has to say, right? Because it's very rare that you get this kind of visceral reaction from both parties from one candidate, right? As far as what he's saying about Bitcoin, I'm all for it, right? If you're going to remove the cap gains tax on Bitcoin, certainly, right? I mean, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to argue for not having to pay 30% on short-term cap gains tax and 15% on long-term, right? However, I do want to make the distinction that when I was going through this article, he did say that the only mention was for Bitcoin to be exempt from cap gains tax, right? When you're transitioning from Bitcoin and you're converting it back to US dollars. So as far as what's going to happen with altcoins when you convert those to US dollars has yet to be determined. But I mean, if I don't know how they're going to manage if they even notice it, but I'm pretty sure that they'll notice it, right? I mean, people are just going to take advantage of the loophole where, okay, well, if Bitcoin is the only exemption from cap gains tax, I'm just going to turn all of my altcoins into Bitcoin before cashing out to US dollars, right? I'm sure they're going to catch that loophole, but I just actually thought it funny. But yeah, I don't think you're going to find too many of us who are going to be opposed to removing the cap gains for Bitcoin, especially since, you know, Joe Biden earlier this year, he was talking about how he's going to increase, or actually, I think he said that he was going to put another 30% cap gains tax on miners, right? And then he went on to say that he was actually thinking about, not thinking about, he's probably going to do it if they allow him. He wants to remove as much of the capital loss exemptions that taxpayers are going to be able to claim when it comes to cryptocurrency. And I think to myself, how could you possibly do that to the American people, right? So not only are you going to tax us with capital gains on top of the income tax that you're already going to charge us, but now you're also going to remove our ability to take a capital loss in case our investment doesn't go the way that it's planned. So you want to set something in place that'll take money from us, but even the small bit of security that we have being able to take a capital loss, and there's a limit to how much capital loss you can take. If you guys didn't know, there's a limit to how much capital loss you can claim on your taxes at the end of the year. But there's no cap on cap gains, right? And so he's like he's trying to take as much money from you as possible and also remove the small amount of security that we as investors have in being able to take capital losses and claim that against our taxes, right? And so when somebody like RFK comes along and sells you this dream about removing taxes from Bitcoin, it's hard not to like the guy, right? Whether he's going to follow up on it, I'm not sure. He might just be trying to win the vote the same way that other politicians do. But I mean, I'm definitely going to gravitate to politicians like him, right? Guys like Ron DeSantis, who's already made it pretty explicit his stance on CBDCs, right? That he's not going to allow these CBDCs, and I'm pretty sure he's going to address taxes on cryptocurrency as well. All right. It's also pretty cool that RFK is like, hey, I'm going to start backing the dollar with hard assets like Bitcoin, like platinum, gold, silver, which is good because you want to hedge the strength of the dollar with finite assets, right? I think it's pretty obvious for anybody who's financially literate, right? That over the last few years we printed so much money that it's just tanking the value of our currency, right? And if you don't get that out of control, at a certain point, there's going to be a time where people are just going to disregard. I know, guys like Michael Sartain say that the U.S. dollar is backed by the U.S. military and all of our fucking weapons. But I mean, how like really are you? That's certainly a compelling argument to make. But so what? You're gonna threaten? You're gonna threaten other countries to accept our dollar if if on paper it's worthless? I mean, like, come on, guys. Like, to be quite honest with you, I don't think that's gonna fly for any considerable amount of time. But when you got politicians like RFK, like Ron DeSantis, who are very crypto friendly, it's really hard to not at the very least consider them for my vote, right? So that's what I've been thinking about over like mulling over the last few days, reading all this stuff about politicians and their thoughts on crypto. How about you guys, man? Give me some of your thoughts and feedbacks on this whole thing.
Well, Jay, I mean, if you're thinking about it, man, technically speaking, they don't want us to have anything, right? So obviously, whatever methods that they can use to make sure that they take money away, which is a brand new money, right? The brand new money is called Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies that they don't know about. All of a sudden, they're like, wait a minute, all of our ability to control these people through the monetary system that we've created is now disappearing, slipping out of our grasp, right? And so I find it interesting how they're trying to thread a needle right now, and you can really see it because other countries are just like, let it happen. But like the United States, there's a reason why they're falling behind in the world, right? And it's because they're trying to thread this needle, kind of like, we got to give it to them because we have to, right? But how do we do it so we can keep control? And you can really see how they're really struggling because you've got two parties right now. It's not Democrat, Republican. It's the people who hate crypto and just want pure control over us. And then the other people who are like, no, just let him have crypto and do whatever it is that he's going to do, right? Like, let it go. So I find it very interesting what's going to be coming here in this next, basically, all of 2024 is just going to be regulations.
To your point, Nate, one of the things that I actually found very interesting from his speech and from that article that they mentioned was that one of RFK's primary goals, right? One of his primary goals was to bring the people within the tech space that work within the cryptocurrency environment, to bring them back from overseas, right? Because it's pretty obvious that because of the lack of regulation, the lack of regulatory clarity, all of the FUD, the SEC, the IRS coming after cryptocurrency as a whole, they've pushed a lot of these different businesses outside of the US and into foreign countries. And RFK was like, look, man, I want to bring these guys back in. Because if we're going to maintain our ability to be the number one superpower in the world, we're going to need as much innovation as possible. And I think it's pretty damn difficult to find anybody who would disagree with you that the next generation of innovators are going to be involved within the Web3 space, right? And so if America and the West in general does its best to push these people out into foreign nations, then we're certainly going to lose our edge. Right, not only in the devaluing of our currency, but also the lack of innovation that's going to be happening here when it comes to that next frontier, right, which is cryptocurrency. Right, so that's another thing that kind of resonated with me, right? As an immigrant, right? I'm a third generation immigrant, right? I came here from the Philippines in 2000. One of the great things about America that my parents actually elucidated for me growing up was that, the reason why people come here is because this is where the opportunity lies. Right? Despite whatever nonsense you might hear from these woke liberals telling you that the United States is a terrible place, there's a reason why millions of immigrants every single year, even to this day, right, wait in line for an opportunity to come to this country. It's because this is where the opportunity is. This is where the innovation is. And don't even like that's not even to say the millions of people who come here illegally, right? Who risk life and limb to come here because they know that this is where the opportunity is. Right? The numbers speak for themselves. Even the people who say they don't like America, well, they're not leaving, right? They're not leaving the country. Right? So actions speak louder than words. And the reason for that is because this is where opportunity is created. right? And if you push the market where the next frontier of innovation and opportunity is going to be created, then you certainly will lose that edge as a country, right? And so I think if I spoke about this a few episodes ago, people who don't realize it, how valuable the space is, how valuable the cryptocurrency market is as a whole, they will eventually, right? Because it's going to become obvious, right? It's going to hit you in the face sooner or later. So, yeah, there's
Yeah,
my,
and
there's my
Jay,
soapbox.
the thing, soapbox. So you're correct about that. Something that's been very concerning, and I don't know, Brendan, if you want to talk about this, because I think you had something to say on it, but they're sending an entire economy overseas. China sees it, and China is going after it. China knows that the United States is like, oh, shoot, get out of here, right? And they can grab major world power over it. So that's kind of what they're doing right now, and it's really concerning. Like, I don't know what the United States is doing right now. Like, we need to get our shit together because we're sending a lot of money and a lot of power overseas to people who we don't necessarily want a regime in.
Yeah, just to say one quick thing on that is I think, we'll talk about this shortly, but we haven't had any regulation within the crypto industry. And so the SEC has pretty much just said, okay, it all falls under us. You need to register as a security, or if you sell securities, i.e. any cryptocurrency, then if you don't, we're going to take you to court. And so because there hasn't been any regulatory clarification within the industry, it's put a lot of difficult decisions on the market. And yes, we still have had a lot of development and a lot of innovation here in the United States, but it's put a little worry into people. And we see, people taking their crypto exchanges overseas, right? Coinbase is still here. We have some of the big ones, but, Binance is like, okay, I guess we can't, do work in the United States. And we're really pushing people away. And so I think that people like RFK, even if they can never get, Bitcoin and the US dollar to be backed by it, it opens up a conversation that is important. And I think that can bring value, even if he can't accomplish what he set out to do, or, say, even if he doesn't get elected, that doesn't mean that he can't push for it to happen. He can sponsor a bill to say that, hey, Bitcoin, the US dollar should be backed by Bitcoin, platinum, gold, etc. And if it gains traction, great. But I think his point is more to create a conversation around how our economy is currently working, how our government is currently spending money way above what it makes, right? And so he's saying, hey, look, we need to be more understanding of how we are affecting the people within a country and the dollar itself.
What's interesting about the conversation that he's sparking is the timing of it. In previous cycles, Bitcoin was only hitting the news during all-time highs. Now we're only 8 months separated from Bitcoin falling through the dumpster to $15,000. We've only 2x since the bottom, and all of a sudden we have 2 presidential nominees, one running on a Democratic ticket, one that's going to be running on a Republican ticket, that are suggesting implementing and fast tracking and tying Bitcoin into our entire economy. Yeah, how radical, how bold of a suggestion is it to tie the US dollar to Bitcoin? We came off the gold standard in 71 under Nixon. And ever since then, it's been hyperinflation after hyperinflation. Our dollar has gotten more and more and more less valuable as time has gone on. And to come in with such a radical suggestion, if somebody could speak on, what that means for the cryptocurrency field in general, what does that mean for it? If you think that it's okay, here it is, it's 2023. It's not 2024. It's not 2025. Bitcoin isn't making new all-time highs. Bitcoin has been at this price it's been at this level of price or higher for the last 3 or 4 years. So what does it mean that we're so early in this next cycle and it's already come into presidential nominees' lips, and it's already, coming out in potential policies. Somebody speak on that if they could.
I would like to just say one quick thing, and I'm just going to say 3 words, and I'm going to move it on to somebody else. The perfect storm theory. If you haven't watched that episode, go back and watch it, because things are already starting to come together that we mentioned 3 weeks ago. Okay? I just want to mention that 3 weeks ago, we started to say, hey, watch out. We could start to see some things come together for a perfect storm in crypto as we lead up to the bull market. And we're starting to see those pieces fall into place.
I think that Trump needs a little bit of credit for starting an NFT chain on Polygon. Just a thought. I mean, it is interesting that that RFK and DeSantis have spoken about cryptocurrencies, and you're right about the perfect storm theory. This is like the perfect storm fucking time. But other than like some diehard Trump fans, there wasn't a lot of hubbub made about 45,000 Trump NFTs being made, on the Polygon network. I mean, I don't really know how much anyone cares about the Polygon network, but like Bitcoin's the thing to talk about. If you're going to talk to normies about crypto, like, you probably shouldn't be broaching polygons or NFTs on Polygon. But I think you guys are giving the government a little bit. So let me back it up. I'm quite a bit nihilistic when it comes to the government's capabilities and doing things. And I think that it's a big game full of rich people that I can't affect, or I can't think about like who I vote for. Ultimately, I don't think makes a fucking difference. Whoever is decided to be the winner is going to be the winner. What the winner can do is like very, very limited. Like if for whatever reason RFK was put into office, like I do like the fact that I'm fond of the fact that he is interested in making steps in progress in the cryptocurrency world. But as far as I can tell, it's all just talk. It's all just like, I don't know if conjecture is the right word. It's all just talk, basically. Like what are the actionable things, and what are the likelihood of outcomes, right? So if we're to look at like a matrix, right, of all the possible people that could be doing things, and what are all the possible outcomes, like me putting any stock behind RFK is just kind of like, oh well, cool, that's a little pipe dream, I'll throw my little $100 scratcher at it, or whatever the case might be. It's interesting, and I hope he goes somewhere and he does something with it, but at the end of the day, like I'm not holding my breath. I'm not doing it. I've the way I figure is the fucking screwy government's going to keep doing screwy government things, and I'm just going to kind of like ride the waves as best I can, and hope for the best, and that shit doesn't go too sour too fast that I can't escape.
No, Will,
thoughts.
I think you're misunderstanding us here. I think I can speak for everybody when I say that I don't think any of us here believe that the government is competent at doing anything. Right? The government is a slow-moving organism that does a lot of talking, but doesn't really get a lot of things done. I think it's pretty obvious to all of us here. We know exactly what happens when Congress meets, right? They meet for a few hours, for a few days, and then they go back on vacation.
Yep.
Right? The government is a slow and incompetent moving vehicle, right? Which is why I think a lot of us would prefer it to kind of go back
Keep
to like
being slow,
a more federalist nation, right? Where it's the primary decision maker is deferred back to its states, right? And the constituents of those states. Right? But I think the reason why we're speaking fondly of some of these presidential candidates is it's because they're pushing the narrative that we want. You're correct.
Yes.
There's a lot of pandering going on to their individual constituents, right? To get that vote. And we know that not everything that they're going to say will come to fruition. But we're all looking at which candidate is pushing the narrative that we want to hear. Because we know that even if something doesn't happen, the narrative will move price. And so if the presidential nominee and whoever wins the candidacy, right, whoever wins the presidency is very pro Bitcoin, does it really matter if he checks off every single thing that he promised to do? Not really. I'd be happy if he checked off all of them, but I'd be happy if he maybe checked off 50%. But the overall arching theme is he's pushing the narrative that we want him to push, which is to funnel as many people as we want into the cryptocurrency market.
Okay, right? So, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think a lot of it comes down, Nate was talking a minute ago. Nate said it's going to come down to those who dislike crypto versus those who like crypto when it comes to what political views that they have. I think it's simpler than that. I think it's going to come down to establishment versus anti-establishment. I think the establishment candidates that you see are going to be the ones that oppose Bitcoin or are in favor of mass regulation and mass control versus the anti-establishment who are live and let live, be free, decentralization. Yeah, we're going to bring in a little bit of regulation, but for the most part, it's going to be regulation that improves the value. And I think that's a lot of what it's going to come down to is the establishment versus anti-establishment side. So, I mean, I thought Nate brought up a very good point. And, Nate, if you could elaborate a little bit more on it, on your mindset behind that, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, actually, I love the way you put that, establishment to anti-establishment. That I think that's hitting the nail on the head, quite frankly. The interesting thing that you're always going to be looking at, right, is when you have this brand new thing, right, and they're trying to look for control, but then you have the other people who are anti-establishment, right, who are just live free. Where do you end up? Hopefully in the middle, right? You got a bit of control, which is a good thing, and it'll help protect people, help secure people. But then you don't have Uncle Sam in your in your pockets and controlling everything that you do, right? It's vitally important that your mindset isn't 100% let's go DeFi, right? And only that and anti-establishment, fuck the government type shit. You do want some regulations. There's got to be some kind of protections, because if not, it's a Wild West, right? The Wild West, people are running around shooting each other all the time. Okay, that's crazy, dude. Like, we do need some laws, man. We do. So I think regulations are going to be really important. But when we do regulate it, it opens up the floodgates for that kind of like totalitarian control that can, quite frankly, go south very quickly. And sadly, countries like China have gone that direction, and you can see that they are like hardcore beaming for like the #1 spot in the world right now. Russia and America is kind of just doing this like they always do, right? And then you got China over here like, hey, since you guys are busy fighting each other, let me build up a bit. And then when you guys are all beat to hell, I'll knock you out, right? And then I win. I'm a little bit concerned, especially like you say, the perfect storm theory. I'm a little bit concerned about United States pushing an entire economy to different countries. Russia basically failing right now because the United States for the most part is attacking them in Ukraine, right? Like, I'm a little bit worried about what's going to happen here with China if U.S. doesn't get their shit together. That's my take on that.
All right. So I have one thing to add, and then we're going to transition to the next topic. But regulation, like you said, Nate, is important. And I think we've seen many times over the past, months to years where there have been issues. One of those is stable coins, right? There's just a wild, wild west of what a stable coin is, why it's worth $1, and if it's in how it's just like what's the US dollar worth if it's backed by nothing. If a stable coin is backed by an algorithm and not hard assets, then why is it really pegged to the dollar, and what keeps it from depegging or going to zero? And we've seen that happen. We've also seen issues with centralized exchanges like FTX, right? Using consumers' money essentially illegally because they are reckless and because they don't really care about their customers. And so when it comes to centralized exchanges, when it comes to stable coins, I think regulation is important. And I think overall, for people to feel safe in investing, the majority of people feeling safe and investing in the crypto community and the crypto assets, we need some regulation, and we need people to, normies, so to speak, to feel a little bit safer like that. So that's all I'm going to say is we do believe that regulation is important, and it's going to help drive the crypto market up because more people will feel comfortable investing. So the next thing that I am going to talk about are articles that are regarding regulation. So there are 2 articles that are being brought to Capitol Hill this week in regards to crypto regulation. And one of these is a bipartisan bill. I don't even know what bipartisan means anymore because there are some Republicans that are really Democrats in how they view economics, how they view social topics. And there are some Democrats like RFK that are more Republican based when it comes to, economic decisions and things like that, or at least what we now consider Republicans. He's probably a classical, mid-centrist Democrat. But so it's hard to say. But so what does bipartisan mean? It just means that someone ran on a Republican ticket, somebody ran on the Democratic ticket. And so we have the first one, which was a bipartisan bill which is called the Crypto Asset National Security Act. This was brought to us by Jack Reed, Democrat of Rhode Island, and co-sponsored by Senators Mark Warner of Virginia, Democrat, and Mike Rounds and Mitt Romney, who are Republicans. Romney from Utah and Rounds from San Diego. So what they want to do with this bill is essentially telling all decentralized finance, DeFi protocols, that they need to KYC everybody that uses their platform. Okay? What is KYC? It means know your customer. It means that for their customer to use their platform, they need to give them all of their information, okay? Their name, their job, their social security number, a picture of their face, their driver's license, their firstborn kid, the future name of their secondborn kid. They need to know what your grandparents' names are. They need to know of any of your deceased grandparents that, were anti-government. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But my point is you need to give them a lot of information so that you can use their platforms. Now, this is normal if you're going to on-ramp fiat currency into somebody like Coinbase, right? You have to give them your driver's license information. You have to give them your name, your address. They have to know who you are. But when it comes to decentralized finance protocols, the whole point of DeFi is that it runs away from centralized exchanges. It runs by itself. It's open source, like Bitcoin. You can see what the code is. You can see how it works. And what they're proposing is that anybody that runs a DeFi protocol needs to KYC their customers. Okay, what does that mean? If no one runs it, if it runs by itself, well, they're saying anyone who has the ability to edit protocol, to edit code, well, then they own the DeFi platform and they need to KYC their customers. And then you might ask, okay, well, what if nobody has the ability to edit the code like Bitcoin, right? Well, okay, then they said anybody that invests more than 25 million also is responsible to KYC other people using these decentralized protocol. Now think about this, okay? Think about how crazy this is. I'm a man, a billionaire, and I invested 25 million pocket change, okay? A scratcher to him into this DeFi protocol. Now, 25 million to us is a lot of money, right? Maybe to some of us. But to billionaires, $25 million is a drop in the bucket, okay? So you're asking a billionaire that just happened to invest 25 million into this protocol because they think that they can make money off it, now has to KYC his customers because apparently he owns this DeFi protocol. Okay, that's stupid. What happens if it were to pass? Okay, no one's ever going to invest 25 million. They're gonna invest $24,999,999.99, right? They're never going to hit that 25 million threshold. So this bill, to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think what they're just trying to do is push so far in one direction that and this is what a lot of politicians do, you push so far in one direction that when the next bill comes, you can now fight for the middle ground. So they're starting so far to the left that even coming a little bit more center, even though it's left, looks like it's a win potentially for crypto when it might not necessarily be the case. So do you want me to go each article at a time? I think it might be good for us to maybe talk about what do you want me to do, Josh?
Yeah, we can just free flow the conversation. I think Nate wanted to hop in real quick. Nate, what do you got?
Yeah, about KYC on DeFi protocols. The entire point is it's decentralized. And not only that, but decentralization comes from a trustless system. And every single interaction that every human being ever has is all about trust, right? The reason why they want KYC is because they don't trust it. Well, they don't understand that it's a smart contract. It is a literal robot, a machine. So what they're saying essentially is not that they don't trust the humans. They're saying they don't trust the machine that is written code. So they really, all I'm hearing out of that, like, oh, we got to put regulation on DeFi. It's like, all I'm hearing is literally, we have no clue what the fuck we're talking about. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous because if you have people who don't know what they're doing, making laws to control what you are doing, who do know what you're doing, right? Then it's just not going to work. It's going to fall apart. So it's concerning. We absolutely cannot have, especially KYC on DeFi, because you're supposed to be numbers. Your wallet address is just numbers and letters, right? You're supposed to be KYC'd as just numbers, right? Maybe you can find a location. You're not supposed to have your social on there, your pictures on there, nothing like that. That is really dumb. This is the only system, though, that these older people in the traditional sense know about. And so that's what they're trying to implement because it's all that they know. They have no idea what this decentralized thing is. Tell a stockbroker, oh, a decentralized stock trade, right? Like, what is that? How does that work? You don't have it, right? So I don't know. That's just pisses me off, man.
Yeah, Nate, sorry, Josh. I just want to say one thing real quick. Really, what this bill that they're putting through comes down to is we don't believe that you can handle your own financial decisions, and that markets and computers can't work without our control. Okay, we're protecting you from yourself because we don't believe that you can be independent and make your own decisions. So they're calling it a threat to national security. They're elevating this to the farthest left position that you could ever take.
Well, you're going to see a lot of that with the different variations of bills that are going to be coming out of the House. We're going to, between now and 2025, I mean, there's going to be probably 10 or 20 different variations of different bills that are sponsored and co-sponsored by random members of the House and the Senate. There are going to be some that are decent. There are going to be some that are absolute trash. And I think the key thing to keep in mind is that, similar to what Nate said, there are a lot of older folks. You think of the representatives that are in Congress, and you think of their age, you think of their experience, you think of the generation that they grew up in. This is a new generation concept, cryptocurrency. So it's going to be tough for anybody who's over the age of 50 or 60 to really understand exactly what this investment vehicle is. And when you start to think about that aspect of it, what you understand is they're going to be throwing out bills, they're going to be throwing out legislation that just it doesn't make sense with what is going to be most successful for mass adoption when it comes to cryptocurrency. You take that bill where it focuses hard on knowing your customers, focuses hard, pretty much essentially eliminates DeFi as a platform. It's terrible. It's going against everything that cryptocurrency was designed to be. But then you take a look at the second article. The second one might be a little bit more rounded off. It might be a little bit better. The second one, the House Republican bill that was put out, the second bill that we're referencing, that one talks more about the difference between the SEC and the commodities futures, and whether a coin will be classified as a security or as a commodity. I think that is essential. when you think of mass adoption in Bitcoin and you think of the regulation that's required, it is very important to be able to determine whether a coin is going to be a security or whether a coin is going to be a commodity, or what branch, or what aspect, what enforcement agency is going to determine that. And especially when you think of something like Gary Gensler and the SEC and everything that he's been through for the last 6 months. I mean, he's no stranger to the show and the opinions that we have on him. So to put any sort of control of cryptocurrency strictly under the SEC, that's something that we're not going to go for. And I don't know any other way to put it other than that. Yeah, I mean, would anybody else agree that, it would be important, sort of like the second article is saying, hey, look, we need to differentiate the difference between securities, commodities, how these different coins are going to be classified. That, I think, is something that is a little bit more reasonable than the Senate one that you talked about, Brendan.
Yeah, I agree, Josh. And there's a couple of questions we have here, but so just so people know, this act is called the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Amendment Act. Again, as Josh said, you can read these articles in our description. You can link to them. But this one is essentially, like you said, they want to say, okay, how do we regulate crypto in a smart way? What does it mean? What does it truthfully mean to be a security? And what does it truthfully mean to be a commodity? And we need some of this realization. We need to be able to talk about what is it that makes a crypto a security or a commodity. And okay, therefore, it either falls under the SEC's guidance, right? Or the CFTC, which is the Commodity Futures and Trading Commission. So it's really, so right now with this bill, it would be 70% commodity and 30% fall under the SEC. So the question is 70% commodity good? And how are they going to draw that line? Do we think it should be 80-20, 90-10? I think it depends on the verbiage and the wording that they put in there, but it's very important. And, I'd like to see as close as possible to 100% commodity. But I do believe that some, maybe like stable coins, need to fall under the SEC's guidance. But these stable coins are a unique situation. So it's just, and again, all of these bills could be passed. Maybe none of them get passed yet. Maybe we need some more time. But what has happened since the SEC's loss against Ripple, we've seen a lot of regulation talk. We're seeing a lot of interest now from the political side to be like, okay, Ripple just took the SEC and just gave him a beating in court. Absolutely just bent him over a barrel and gave it to him. Seriously. And so now I think that politicians are feeling a little bit better and having a little bit easier time pushing through some potential regulations.
Yeah, Brendan, I think regulations are going to be good in the sense because it's going to give you guidelines, right? It's going to be able to define fairly clearly which assets, when we're talking about cryptocurrencies, will fall under a security and which one of those will fall under the commodity. And the good thing about that is if you do have certain developers and creators that maybe want to adhere a little bit more strictly to what the SEC considers a security, then they can create an asset that is more in line with what a security is, and they're going to be a little bit more heavily regulated, but they're also going to be a little bit more accepted within traditional finance, right? And it's good to have guidelines like those because if you have rules to follow, then you also have boundaries that if they are broken, that they are being broken, and then then sufficient punishment and enforcement can actually follow. But as of right now, if you're only going to be doing regulation by enforcement, which is how Gary Gensler and the SEC have pursued their enforcement against these companies like Binance and like Coinbase, then you're never going to be able to you're never going to be able to bring these companies to stay within the US and actually follow your rules, right? What's going to happen is you're going to be pushing them away into foreign countries, like what's happening currently. And so, do we want a significant amount of regulation within the space? No, but we do want some, right? Because when you have guidelines, you can follow them, and when they are broken, then you know that the appropriate enforcement action needs to be taken, right? But you can't overregulate, right? You were talking about the first bill about how this bipartisan bill, they wanted to KYC significantly DeFi protocols. And the argument that you're going to hear from these people is that we want to protect the consumers. And let's face it, guys, that argument isn't unique to the cryptocurrency space. I mean, one fairly good example, I think you all can agree, is gun control, right? They want to take away your guns because they say that it's to protect the American people. But this is a common pattern with the government. And what they do is, you guys are familiar with the term helicopter parenting. That's what the government is, right? They helicopter parent. They want to take your problems away from you. Whether it's what Josh said, that they actually think that you're stupid and that you can't make responsible decisions for yourself, or they actually do, they are genuine in their statement about wanting to protect you, right? But you can't be a helicopter parent because you can't take people's problems away from them. Because the unfortunate reality is, Uncle Sam is not going to be there to hold your hand forever, right? At a certain point, you're going to have to go out there and make decisions for yourself, right? And if you always have to fall back on the government to take care of you, you're going to be waiting for a very long time because they're not going to take care of you, right? And so you can't take people's problems away from them. What you can do is give them proper regulation, right? Regulatory guidelines, so that they know how to act within the bounds of that regulation, right? And then I'm sure that Brendan will go over this, but there's one bill that is being proposed by Gillibrand, and I think Loomis, I think is her last name.
Yep.
Talking about precisely making that regulation very clear, right? And so people know exactly the risk associated with it. One of the things that they mentioned within that bill was that they wanted these large entities like exchanges to actually show people not only the risk associated with engaging in this type of investment, right, but also to show them their balance sheet, right? Do you actually have proof of reserves? And I thought that was actually wonderful, right? Because if you're going to have a stable coin, right, like you mentioned, Brendan, right, and you have $200 million worth of stable coin, and then you show your customers when they sign on, okay, guys, we have $200 million in stablecoin, and we actually do have $200 million worth in reserves to back our stablecoin, right? And then me as a consumer is going to be like, okay, I could be a little bit more comfortable investing in that because I actually know that you have something backing up the value of whatever it is that you're selling, right? Not like with FTX. And so when you hear stuff like that from regulators, that's the kind of stuff that we want to hear, right? That's the kind of stuff that we need. Right. The only thing that you could do is give people the tools in order to educate themselves, but you can't take their problems away from them. And so, gals like Gillibrand who are putting forward this kind of proposals, that's what I like to hear, right? That's what I like to see, because you're giving people the tools in order to problem solve for themselves, right? To be sovereign individuals. And that is the spirit of crypto, not, KYC everybody. That's the complete opposite, right? That's antithetical to the spirit of crypto. So, Brendan, I know you could speak a little bit more in detail about the bill that Gillibrand was proposing.
Yeah.
So I'll hand it over to you, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Yeah, really good points there. And I think that rolls in really well. Right? When we talk about bills, it's not like there's not going to be one bill that perfectly regulates crypto, because there's different aspects of crypto, right? There's your overall space and say, okay, is it a security? Is it a commodity? Or again, we've said, should it be its own little bucket and something else? It sounds like we're moving more towards regulating it and deciding, if it's a security or if it's a commodity. But then there's another aspect, and that aspect is centralized exchanges and things like stable coins. Okay, we need transparency here, like you said, Jay. And so this bill was actually brought about first about a year ago. So Cynthia Loomis, a Republican from Wyoming, and Gillibrand, for a Democrat from New York. So this is a bipartisan bill, which is good. Generally, when you see a bipartisan bill, you start to have some more opportunities for both sides to jump on, right? Because they don't just want to always back a bill from the other side, even though shouldn't be that way. But this bill is coming back around. And, what was good about this is this bill came a year ago when really there was no talk about crypto regulation. No one wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I think that it was really a good first sort of soiree into the field of regulation. And it's important. And I think that it's good that this is coming back around because, look, centralized exchanges, they're not decentralized. We're not able to look at their code and see how it works. DeFi, by definition, is transparent because you can read its code. You can see what's happening. You can see how it works. And with companies that control the money and control the assets that back the coins that they hold, then that's important. And we need transparency as a consumer when it comes to a business. But a business like Coinbase or a business like Binance or Kraken or Luna, like Luna is another great example of, just widely inefficient guidance in from that company, but especially their stable coin. But yeah, it's important. And so this bill coming back around to try to hold businesses accountable for how they use the money that we have given them, right? They're custodian of the money that we have given them to hold our assets. Now, also, I think it's important because if Bitcoin gets a spot ETF, then these custodians like Coinbase are going to be the ones that are holding the Bitcoin for, right, all of these retirement plans and all of these spot ETFs. And so I think it's really even potentially more important to get some regulatory framework regarding centralized exchanges and stable currencies. But again, we have to separate those types of people from decentralized finance. And that's why we need different regulation and smart regulation that really drills down into the specifics of that part of the industry and that part of the market that we're working in. And so if there's anything that anybody wants to add, please do. But there's one thing that I want to just talk about too when it comes to regulatory framework, and you guys can wrap in your answers to this. But we're coming up on essentially the end of this year, and then we're going to have 1 year. Essentially, it's the election year, right? So we know that a lot of people don't like to pass large bills in an election year. So if we don't get crypto regulation passed in the next 4, 5, 6 months, do you think we'll see regulation before the presidential election? And is it going to be too long to wait another 18 months for some of this regulation to hit? Now, maybe 18 months is perfect to tie into that perfect storm theory, but it is a really interesting question. I think a topic that I'd like to hear you guys' answers on. Will we see regulation before the next presidential election?
To tell you the truth, Brandon. Oh, you can go ahead, Josh, if you want to.
Yeah, I was just I don't even think we're gonna see regulation coming. I mean, yeah, we'll have members of Congress that are, calling subcommittees and maybe talking about it, and they might be leaking their information to the press. But I don't even think we're going to see anything regulation-wise within the next 6 months. I don't think crypto regulation is going to come around until after 2024. I think, we're starting to get into primary season now. So that's going to take up a large majority of the rest of 2023. And then especially when we get into 2024, I mean, it's going to be full presidential election cycle swing. So we're going to have debates and all that stuff. Now, will the topic of crypto come up? Sure. Topic of crypto very well could come up. But as far as regulation is not going to come until after November 2024. And that's just what I think. It'll be if Biden gets voted out and we have a new president in, then that would be the golden opportunity for, a new Congress to come in and set a wave, hit some crypto regulation in there, get it in there. That would be one of those first 100 days sort of things if we had, a president that was elected that was strong enough on it. But honestly, if Biden gets reelected, I don't know how high up on the plate it is, to be honest with you, but as far as prior to 2024, prior to the election cycle, I don't think we're going to see any regulation coming out. But yep, that's just me. How about you, Nate? What do you think?
No, actually, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It, it's really funny how the problems of the world suddenly just go by the wayside as soon as it's the election season, right? It's like they just sit there and focus on like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, promising all over the place, right? And you're gonna hear a lot of buzzwords. I would think if we're hearing crypto, it's actually a sentiment sign, right? It's something that, hey, crypto is in the public consciousness at this point, so much so that it's, well, again, perfect storm theory, right? There's just tack another one in there, right? The public knows about crypto now, right? The Bitcoin. And when you hear these politicians talking about it, it's exactly as you said, they're just going to forget about the actual real trying to take care of, crypto regulations. They're just going to be like crypto buzzword, crypto buzzword, crypto buzzword,
I think the unfortunate reality is, and probably going to get some heat from this, but the things that happened with Luna, with FTX, with Celsius, Three Arrows, I think all of that needed to happen. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Nate, that because of what happened with those big companies, you have now all of these different politicians jumping onto it. Well, why is that? I think one of the primary reasons is enough people got hurt, and it made its rounds in major news outlets that now it's the hot topic to talk about, right? And the unfortunate reality is, I think, things like this need to happen. The envelope needs to be pushed and torn in some cases in order for our politicians and for our lawmakers to actually pay attention to these things, right?
There is no bad press.
Yeah, right. And so I think what Josh said is actually pretty accurate. I think now we are in a time when, because enough nastiness has happened within the market, that lawmakers are and politicians are finally starting to pay attention. But as far as actual laws and regulations for cryptocurrency as a whole, I don't think that's going to happen until after a new president is elected. Right? Right now, they're bringing it in so that they can now add it to their talking points during this next election cycle, right? But I'm actually with Josh on this as well. I don't think we're gonna get any regulation until after a next president is elected, and like he said, only if they really feel strongly about that particular subject as a whole. But as long as it's not Biden, man. One thing that I really like about RFK, one of my favorite things about RFK, is that this man, he actually has a speech impediment, and yet this man is still more fucking articulate than Joe Biden. He's got my vote. He's got my vote just for that.
Yeah, I just want to say two quick things. First of all, in agreement that most of the regulation probably isn't going to come until after the next presidential election. But I do think that we could see regulation on stablecoins and exchanges, because I think that is a really important regulatory topic. And since it already started a year ago, the first time that they introduced that bill, maybe this bill doesn't go through. Maybe they have to rewrite it. But I think that people are starting to understand that centralized exchanges and people that are holding our money and holding our coins need to be held responsible for being transparent, and also with stable coins. So I do think we could see some regulation in the stablecoin and centralized exchange area, but I don't think we're going to get any real regulation unless, one, Gary Gensler gets fired, two, we continue to just see such a growth in the market that it keeps pushing lawmakers into a corner to make a regulatory framework. What happens if the SEC takes someone else to court and loses again? Okay, we really have to put something into paper then. But again, I overall agree that I don't think most of the regulation is probably going to happen until the next president is elected. Now, I think it will happen. I think we will start to get regulation, and that is going to help propel us into a potential perfect storm bull market. But it's not all going to come right away, right? It takes time. But we're starting to see these bills get proposed, which means that there's more talk behind the scenes than you're even seeing from the Bills out in the forefront of what people see.
You know what I'm really hoping, guys? You know how in sports, whenever the head coach takes a L and he doesn't get the championship, he doesn't take home the win, they just fire him for the next one. That's what I'm hoping with Gary Gensler, man, because he took such a fat L during this case with Ripple, and he's over here in Twitter talking about like, oh no, they made the wrong decision. I hope they, it's like I'm just hoping, like the powers that be, just like, yo, Gary, you made us look bad. You took a fat L from this company, and you're swearing up and down that you were going to take them to court and beat them, and you've just tarnished our record. Goodbye. We're going to get somebody in here to to clear our name.
What are you thinking, Will?
I was thinking earlier that I'm going to be the black sheep here and be like, fuck all this regulation crap. Give me the Wild West. Give me all that. But the topic kind of switched away from that, and now I'm thinking about how fucking much of an idiot Gary Gensler is, and just kind of enjoying that. Not a whole lot going on up here.
Well, the thing is, right, Will, a lot of us actually don't mind that the crypto is the Wild West. I think that's what makes it exciting, right? That's one of the draws, right? There's a lot of risk, and because the risk is there's also a lot of upside potential, right? There's a lot of reward. But the unfortunate reality of the situation is, unless we do get some kind of regulation in place, we're never going to get to the point where cryptocurrency is widely adopted. So it has to happen, right? We all want a lot more people to be invested in this asset class, right? One, because we know that inherently it's good for them, right? And two, of course, for selfish reasons too, right? Because we want our bags to be pumped. But like I said, the unfortunate reality of the situation is, unless we get these bigger players involved, and the only way that they're going to get involved is if we get some regulatory guidelines in place, some clarity, so that the old money, the more conservative investors, have strict guidelines and boundaries that they can see followed, and if they see it broken, will be enforced. Then we're not going to get the kind of money that we want within the crypto space. So is it? Am I in agreement with you that yes? I like crypto, that it's the Wild West, certainly. But if we want more people to be involved here, I think it's inevitable, man. And I know that hurts to hear, especially for some people who really are 100% about the spirit of crypto, right? The decentralized, the anonymity of it, the fact that there's no one government and one person controls it. But if we want mass adoption, it has to happen, right? These people have to they have to get involved. The U.S. government has to get involved, right? These large asset managers like BlackRock have to be involved. Otherwise, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to get anywhere past $1 trillion in market cap. So that's my thoughts.
Maybe you might be right. I don't know. I still don't like it.
Like, so how do you think it will happen if we don't get these people in it? Like, give me.
I got no clue, man. It happened this far with so little. Like, I don't know if that means we can extrapolate further growth in continuance of what we've already got, or not, or if that means like, hey, this is like the end of the rope, or whatever. I'm not gonna cheer for any sort of regulation. I just, on principle, I'm against it. So
I'll take a contrarian point of view, Jay.
Same principle. I'm against it on principle.
Yeah,
but
in reality too.
Do I want to get more people involved, and do I want more money in the space? Yes, on principle, I'm against it. But the greedy part of me says I want my bags pumped. Damn it.
Yeah, but Jay, I think there's two things. First, you'd say, okay, well, we're at 1 trillion now, but the bull market, right? We're at 3 trillion. So without any government regulation, we could see the next bull market hit 5 or 6 trillion. So yeah, could we say that from Will's standpoint, okay, I'm okay with it only going to 5 to 6 trillion because it's fully decentralized and the government's not involved. But there's no guarantee that happens, especially if we get another FTX or Luna debacle, right? There could be a lot more FUD and a lot more issues that come into the market. Again, do I like that crypto is decentralized? Yes. And that's why I also want regulation that's smart and allows for crypto to still be decentralized, right? That 70% or more are considered commodities and therefore doesn't fall under SEC guidance. I still think that that's a pretty big win, right? Smart regulation, bring more people in. Let's get some of these boomers retirement funds, get some crypto in there. And, let's take this thing to the moon. Let's really, because what do we think crypto is? We think that crypto is the solution in the future to government overreach, right? We think that if someone can't control the cost, and of course now, yes, of course people can't control, but BlackRock and them, they're not getting into every, right? We're not going to get a spot ETF for something like fluffy slippers, right? Which is a coin we just love so much, or Pepe. We're only going to get spot ETFs on a few of the big coins. Therefore, everything else is still going to be decentralized, and it's still going to be what we want it to be, I think, in my opinion. And that's what I want.
I see the government as a big, giant. Have you guys seen Osmosis Jones? You remember that movie?
Yeah, saw it recently.
Everything the dude touches dies, right? That's what I think of the government. So
yeah, the opposite of the Midas touch, right?
Yeah, the non-Midas touch. So, like, I do like pipe dreams, but I just don't see government involvement improving anything. However, I'm very nihilistic and skeptical, so it's like I just think that that's my contrarian viewpoint.
Well, I'm a pragmatist.
So, yes, and it's good to have a round table full of all of these options, because I guess at the end of the day we'll see what plays out and what happens, right? But I just got to be the contrarian here and say, keep that government out of my little cool kids club.
No, but
so that way we can keep doing cool stuff.
I want the government as much as possible out of my life. But how long until that novelty factor with crypto disappears, right? Brendan said it, 3 trillion, we could head to 5 without any government involvement, without any large asset manager involvement. But when does that novelty disappear, right? I mean, I want the gains for me, but I also want it for my kids, right? I want it for my grandkids. I want them to be able to get in that space. And so will the novelty disappear when it's their time to invest? So it's like Brendan said, right? It has to be smart regulation, right? You have to be in partnership, right? And I think in order for that to be successful, you have to have enough people within the space to push back heavily, right? When the government oversteps their boundaries. And you know what the great thing is, guys? I think we are coming to a point in time when the American people are a little bit more vocal when they really don't like what's happening, right? Right? Because before, when the government said something, everybody was like, okay, man, I think they're right. I think people are starting to realize, we're starting to wake up a little bit more to the fact that the government they're not God, right? They are not omniscient, they're not omnipotent, and they are not, what's the other one? The omnipresent, right? They are not God. And they are fallible the same way that we all are. And so I think people are becoming a little bit more vocal, right? And I think that's what's going to have to happen. When the government does something that it's not in line of smart regulation, like Brendan said, then the American people will speak. And they say, no, take a few steps back, my guy. So
I don't think it's up for debate, the 5 of us that are talking right here. Absolutely, we like the Wild West of crypto. I don't think there's anybody that's going to deny that. And the reason is because we have self-responsibility. We take ownership for the decisions that we make. As crypto grows, you're going to see more and more people get into this space that do not have self-accountability. You think of what happened with FTX. Thousands and thousands of people lost a lot of money. FTX was the new kid on the block. And that last cycle, FTX rose to prominence. So it was a lot of people's first experience into crypto, right? And those people lost a lot of money. Not all those people had self-accountability. They didn't take ownership for their decisions. And as this space grows, there's going to be, this ties in with the regulation portion. There's going to be various senators, there's going to be various congressmen who want to take the approach of the helicopter parent. And that's just something that we have to accept as this space gets bigger, because they're not all us. You know what I'm saying? They don't all have the same mindset. There's a lot of different mindsets that are going to start coming into this. I absolutely agree 100%. I don't like government touching anything. I heard an analogy of Bitcoin that really made sense. And I can't remember who said, but Bitcoin like started as a snowball, right? And Bitcoin has gotten to a point now where it's so heavy to push by itself that if we don't have adoption of this, then it's going to take more momentum to continue to elevate Bitcoin's price. It's a lot easier to move the price of Bitcoin when it was a penny or $1 or $10 or $100 than it is right now. Once we get to that new all-time high, it's going to take a lot more momentum to move that. So if we want to see the prices of these coins that we're in continue to grow in value, we're going to need more people in to generate that momentum. That's just physics. And that happens across the board. It can happen physically, and it happens in the financial system. The stronger and the bigger a company gets, the more and more is needed for that momentum to grow. I completely agree. We hit 3 trillion in the last cycle. This next cycle could be 5 to 6 to 7 trillion. I even think it could go to 10 trillion. I think $10 trillion for the market cap this next upcoming cycle is very possible. But it's going to take
double
more
market
adoption.
cap is minimum. I think double market cap is minimum.
For sure.
Now, are you saying that without any new spot ETFs and without any regulation? Or are you just saying that currently as we are, or with everything coming together properly?
I think that, of course, it would be substantially more likely that it occurs as adoption occurs as well. So Bitcoin is a certain size now. It was smaller in the past, and it's going to get larger in the future. All right. At this time and place where we are right now, that price point is very possible. We could be looking at a $5 trillion Bitcoin market cap in 2 years. I think it's very possible, but adoption has to continue to happen. And as adoption continues to happen, government's going to want to get its hands in on it. And that is just the case. Like, I wish there was a world, I wish we could write a book that said that wasn't the case. But unfortunately, that's the case. And when we look at that scenario, we have to just say, okay, this is coming. This is what's going to happen. What can we do? And I think making this channel, getting together, talking to folks about it, I think this is a part of what every single person that owns cryptocurrency right now should be doing. Is educating and talking about it and letting their opinions be known. Because the folks that we have that are watching this live, the folks that are going to be watching this on replay, it might make sense to them. Hey, you know what? That actually makes sense. So, go ahead. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. Before we get to Gas's question, which is a great question. We're only looking short term, right? We all said that we're all in this for the long term, right? So if we're thinking 5 to 10 trillion this bull market, well, then we push this out to 8 to 10 years to top of the next bull market, and we might be looking at 25 to 30 trillion dollar in market cap for crypto. So think about we're thinking about short term. We're talking about short term, realistically, 2025, maybe 2026. But if we're talking, 2030, 2033, something to that extent, we're talking exponentially larger market in crypto, out the roof. And so that's why it's like, okay, you need to get in early. You need to get in before this starts to just take off on a rocket ship. And this is not financial advice. This is just, us talking in our opinions of what we've learned in the market and where we see this market potentially going. That doesn't mean that there still aren't risks associated, right? Because risks and rewards are pretty equally correlated, the higher risk you have, the potential for more higher reward or for more losses. But let's not just take a short-term approach to this. You also have to think next bull market run, next bull market run. What is the high point that crypto could get to in the next 10 to 15 or 20 years? Is that going to make life-changing money for you in generations to come? And that's a question you need to research and answer yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to cover Cassie's question real quick. I think it's really good. And then we're going to go ahead and roll on to the third article. But pretty much, let me read it real quick. What would smart what would regulation look like? Nate, what do you think? What do you think smart regulation would look like in the space?
Well, smart regulation is going to be anything that helps protect the customer, but isn't intrusive, right? And so here's the thing. So when you're asking about like how much is too much regulation, and what does smart regulation look like? Smart regulation is any rules that is going to help out anybody to make smart investments while also protecting them. The part of the perfect storm theory that we have going here is that it's all about security, right? Every single thing that is going to be coming together in this perfect storm is going to be based around security. And so like with the spot ETF, that's backed by BlackRock. All these older money with the big money, right, are going to be looking at that saying, this is safe. We don't have to worry about that, right? When it comes to the regulations are going to help out with like, here's the actual fence line, here's the laws, right? Here's where you cannot break. And here's also where the insurance protection of investing in this is going to be. This is going to bring in a lot more money. That's why you don't want over-regulation to the point where they've completely fenced you in. But when you walk into that cage, right, you're looking at where the lines are, right, where you can go past and where you cannot go past. It's just overall going to help out with people just bringing money in. So yeah, that's my take on that. It's very smart to have a few regulations, but not a lot.
Yeah, that is a very good point, Nate. Right, I like the picture that you put of like the lions right within the cage, right? Maybe cage isn't the word that I'd want to use, but boundaries, right? Or think of it like lines within the coloring book, right? You know that if you're going to color outside the lines, then you're going too far out. So you know exactly how to act within the boundaries of that specific guideline, right? And I think we've touched on a few things today that would make for really intelligent regulation, right? You have to make it very clear how you would consider an asset to either fall within, when we're talking about the context of crypto, when it would fall as a security and when it would fall as a commodity, right? You have to be very transparent about how these different businesses like Coinbase and Binance can register with you as an entity, right? You can't have any of that hazy, right? And then another part of Cassie's question is, right, if she says here, if you all had to say, how would you regulate crypto? If it was me in that position of responsibility, I'd treat it the way that I treat a lot of other things, right? And that's, you have to be adaptable, right? You have to be able to bob and weave and roll with the punches, right? If we have guidelines in place and then something happens that needs to be addressed that is not included within those guidelines, because I think we can all agree here that that's going to be inevitable, right? That's going to happen. Then you have to be adaptable, right? There has to be addendums, right, to those regulations, so that if something happens that is outside of the purview of this space, then we can just add on to it. Right? But you have to be proactive and you have to be paying attention. So me personally, if I was in that position, I'd make it so that we're as adaptable as possible. I know that's asking for a bit too much, especially from the U.S. government, because like we said here today, like they're a slow-moving entity, right? So adaptable isn't really the word that I would use to describe politicians and lawmakers. But if I was in that position and I had the means to do so, that's what I would do, right? It would be a dance, right? It'd be a dance between the American people and us as regulators and lawmakers, right? That when something comes up that needs to be addressed, we address it right then and there, right? And then we add on to it.
All right, let's go ahead and get on to our third and final topic. The Federal Reserve on Thursday launched its FedNow instant payment service following several years of developing a system officials say will allow for faster flow of cash from businesses and individuals. All right, so I want to open it up to the panel here. You know, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. It might just be a duck, right? So, how much does this look like the foundation to CBDC? I want to pose that question to you guys. It's obviously the elephant in the room, and I wanted to get y'all's opinion. So, Brendan, if you could hop off, or Will, one of you two, and how much does this sound like the foundation and the laywork of a futuristic CBDC here in the United States?
Sure. Yeah, I can take that first if you'd like. It's a great question. So first is what is FedNow, right? It allows people to essentially make real-time transactions 24/7. We know the government works 24/7. We know that they make really, really great platforms. If you ever had to try to get money because you were out of work during COVID, those sites weren't up for an hour over weeks. They just crashed and crashed and crashed. And we put millions of dollars into building one little website. Okay. So that's a small thing. And now we're asking the government to regulate and to allow us to have, essentially payments on a digital scale instantaneously. Yeah. What is the next step for them? Okay. Hey, this is great. Let's just take it one step further and say, hey, the only way that you can transact is digitally now. Okay. We don't think using hard dollars is important, because that allows criminals to buy things like guns on the black market, and then they're going to have a mass shooting, or they're going to be able to fund the cartel within the United States. And so we need to be able to track every single transaction. And we have a lot of research from the FedNow and how things have been working, that we think that this is a really great way to bring you safety, so that the cartel isn't going to bring you harm. And the only way that we can do that is to ensure that we know every single transaction from every single bank account, who that bank account is connected with, and what it was used for. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit last episode about what happened in Canada when the truckers went on strike because of the laws that they had to wear a mask in their truck to be able to drive in Canada. They had to be vaccinated to drive in Canada in their truck, or to get poked. I have no idea. I don't have an opinion on that. The only thing I'm saying is that the government froze bank accounts because they thought people were involved in something that they didn't like. And so the question is, does the FedNow move us into a position that allows the government to freeze bank accounts for transactions that they don't like? And I think it's inevitable that when you launch something like a digital transaction platform, that it's very easy to just slide down that slippery slope into central bank digital currencies.
The idea of digital funding and digital assets, I mean, it's not new. We've been living pretty much with digital funds for the last decade or two. When you think of using your bank card, going to you just swiping a debit card, a credit card. I can't even go to football games now without needing a card. I can no longer use cash ever since COVID came around. I think COVID was a big period of time where there was a big switch, where cash kind of became obsolete almost. I can't go anywhere now really to use cash anymore, with the exception of maybe a gas station. But if I'm going anywhere in public, if I'm going to a baseball game, if I'm going to any sort of event, I mean, I can't use cash, So when you think of the idea of going digital, I mean, we've been going digital for a while. The only difference is that we really haven't had the government with its hand in the pot, so to speak. I think that this instant payment system would be great if it stopped right here. And if there was no government input in it at all, I'm right there along the lines with Will. I think anything the government touches is absolutely terrible. I think if it stops right now and we have the ability for me to wire, me to send one of you guys $500 right now when it arrives the second after I click it, I think that's outstanding. But I don't know if it's going to stop there. I don't think it's going to stop there. And I think that as adoption continues to grow, I think a CBDC is going to come around more often than not. And the way I like to say it right now is, I was thinking about trying to figure out an analogy, and it's like, okay, well, right now we're putting down train tracks, right? Train's not in the picture yet. Amtrak's not in the picture. Any of the big train companies, they're not in the picture yet. Right now, we're putting down the wood, we're laying the rails, we're setting the train tracks right now. If no train ever came onto those tracks, I think that where it sits right now, I think it would be great to use. But if that train ever comes on that tracks, that's going to open the Pandora's box, so to speak. What do you guys think on it? I'm interested to know if you guys agree with me, if you guys disagree, and let's talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there, Josh. I think, in essence, the FedNow is the copy paste of crypto, right? Instant transfer, right? You get the money the second that you scan a QR code or use the system or use the app that these banks are going to be potentially developing, right? So it's a copy paste of crypto, right? They're just taking the best of the best and they are plagiarizing it. And if they used it in that sense, I think it would be good, right? Because it's really difficult to have to use a wire and have to wait 3 or 5 days or sometimes even longer for your bank to clear it, right? That's kind of a pain in the ass. And so the speed of use is definitely something that's valuable. But, one of our mentors, Miguel, DCC has spoken about it, right? This is kind of the lead. It's the lead up to eventually them saying, okay, now we're able to use it for for fiat, right, and for credit and debit transactions, stuff of that nature, right? But eventually, the only way that you're going to be able to use the system is if you use the CBDC that comes along with it. Right. And then eventually, if they really want to phase out all other payment systems, they're going to be able to do that. Right. And so it's kind of like a precursor. Now, whether it happens or not, I'm not sure. I think whether the FedNow leads into CBDC, I think will be highly dependent on who wins in the next election. Right. And maybe we have some states that, like Florida with Ron DeSantis, regardless of whether CBDCs are encouraged by the broader U.S. government, right? He's gonna be like, no, man, not in my state. So I'm in agreement with Josh. I think if it stops at the utility and the fast transactions, instantaneous transactions, I think that'll be fine. But if they start telling you, hey, you know what, you can only use this system with the CBDC, and eventually we're all going to transition out of other types of payments and into this solely, like, you guys can imagine that happening, right? In the beginning, places take cash and credit. And like Josh said, can't even go to a game without a credit card because none of them accept cash. Eventually, well, we don't accept credit cards anymore. We only use FedNow and CBDC, right? I mean, at the very least, to me, it doesn't sound too far-fetched from happening, right? So That's it's kind of like my initial thoughts on it, but maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. I don't know.
Isn't FedNow just Zelle on a larger scale? I mean, essentially, we've been doing something similar to this. So, and banks have Zelle. We I can send money on the back of a Gazelle from my bank to my friend's bank, and it gets there instantaneously. So, why FedNow? What's the reason that we need it if we already have systems that work in this way? And so you have to ask yourself, why are we bringing FedNow to the table if we already have this technology and using it? Can't we just widen the use of that technology like Zelle? Well, one, right? Zelle is a private company that makes their own money based on these transactions, and the government wants what? They want their piece of the pie. And if they want their piece of the pie, they need a way to be able to control that piece of the pie. And that's why this could move, like you said, Jay and Josh, from just a really great, easy to use system. It allows us to move money from one person to another quickly, to something that is, a little bit of maybe a government overreach into, where we use our money.
Well, the idea of FedNow, sure, like you and I, we can Zelle each other money right now, but we're individuals. So the idea of FedNow is for banks to be able to process that pretty much instantaneously. Like so far, there are 35 companies that have signed on since Thursday to use FedNow. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, 2 of the 4 largest banks in the United States have signed up to use this. So it's more so, when you think of your paychecks, any sort of banking, anything that's not individual, anything that doesn't require, hey, Brendan, here's $500. I can sell this to you real quick. Anything bank related, anything commercial, it would be an instantaneous form of that. So yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's Zelle, but it's for like your paychecks, and it's for anything requiring, retail or commercial banking, pretty much from an employer, from an organization, or from something like that. Yeah. Nate, I'm actually, Will, I'm curious on your thoughts, man.
I was gonna say, Brendan stole the words right out. Well, didn't steal it. He came up with it and spoke first. But the government just wants control over something that already exists. Like Zelle exists, Cash App exists, PayPal's been around for a long fucking time. Like it's that they're not quite as good, but it's the same. It's the same idea. I think that the functionality is a little bit different. I'm fairly certain that PayPal and Zelle and Cash App, they all front the money up, like they put forward the money that you want to send, and then they like bill the bank on the back end or something, and their money just like floats around in limbo in the meantime through some mechanism of like accuracy and ledger reporting. And I don't know exactly how the money machine works for those companies, but the government wants to have control over it, just like that. Well, I suppose it would be pretty reasonable to assume that the government wants control over it. We don't know for sure, but like that's a reasonable guess to make, is that the government wants more power pretty much at all times. And so operating on that assumption, they want to have, they would want to have sole franchise over this whole capability and be able to stop, degenerates like you and me from transacting with money freely and stuff. So that was it. Just basically the same thing Brendan was saying.
Nate, I saw you getting a little fired up there behind the camera when he was talking. Did you want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so a little interesting thing about FedNow, right? So the functionality of FedNow, if you add that in with the USDC coin, you essentially have a CBDC that, well, you have a USD coin, right, that you can monkey around with, right? You can change things so that way it regulates it. Quite frankly, if you really want to see the future, it's already here on this planet. Just go look at China. They've already done these things, right? Zimbabwe, I think, is another one that did it. As of right now, they've got, well, no, actually, they're doing Bitcoin, so never mind. But yeah, The deal is that basically this is the very beginning. Just like with other things, whenever the government does anything, they very slowly start. They heat up the pot just a little bit at a time, right? The entire thing is basically brainwashing people or getting people used to what it is that they want to implement. And so they've already for the crypto bros, they've implemented something called USDC with Circle. They actually work with the government. And then, so yeah, people love that now. Woohoo, yay, right? Okay, now let's go ahead and introduce the fast payment system that works just like a crypto, but it's not a crypto, right? FedNow. Now, these are going to be traditional people are going to be like, ooh, look at the way it works. It's so nice, right? It's so much better than the way we used to do it. And then they're going to combine that and be like, oh, by the way, this fast payment system is no longer really like US dollars like you guys are used to. No, now it's going to be like an online coin type of deal. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll get rid of the US dollar. And then from there, they can just say, okay, now that everybody's used to this, we're we're messing with the numbers too much, right? We got too much inflation going in a certain way. Let's go ahead and make sure that you only use a certain portion percentage of the money that we're giving you for red meats, right? Everything else it can be used however you want, but you can't go overboard with the red meats, right? Once you've spent this much on it, we cut you off. It'll no longer be accepted. And you can see from there how things start sliding at that point, right? More and more and more controls. Again, like I said way back, this was several episodes ago now, they're building that fence, right? They're fencing you in. It's regulations and all these just laws and stuff that they're making. Ultimately, like you need to be able to see, like anyone who's watching this, you need to be able to kind of see what they're doing here. And A, yes, it's a good thing, but also B, make sure you learn how to deal with it properly so that way you're not going to be suddenly trapped.
Not only that, but it could just take something as simple as another, the next natural disaster or a catastrophic event to happen in the United States for them to just hit that switch. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be war, whether it be another pandemic that occurs, a cough, a beer bug, something like that. Zombie virus. It could be something like that. It could be it could be something as simple as that. But Brendan, what are you seeing on the FAQs for Fed?
Yeah. So I just want to, we're talking about it. If people have questions, you can just go to the website and read about it. So essentially, one of the most popular, frequently asked questions is, if we go, where am I here? Is this a central bank digital currency? Nope, it's not a central bank digital currency. It's just a payment service, right? Now, why would they be even putting this into their frequently asked questions if there wasn't reason for worry? If there wasn't a possibility for a digital bank, central bank digital currency to now be wrapped into FedNow. So yeah, if it's in here, there's a lot of people talking about it, which means there is worry. And whenever somebody answers no right off the bat, I'm like, okay, why is this frequently asked question even here? So again, I think FedNow, as it currently stands, is a really good opportunity for ease of transactions. Like Jay said, this is taking the best of crypto and bringing it into the banking sector, and then the banks allow consumers to be tied into the FedNow through their platforms, right? They can essentially link us individual consumers into FedNow by developing areas of their app that allow us to send money. But when we send money, it just uses the FedNow service. So yes, it is for banks to banks, but it ends up allowing consumers to be tied into this as well. And so it's very interesting. And I always have questions about this. When there is a question and it's just like a hard no, why is this question even here? Why do you need to tell me this isn't central bank digital currency? That's all. I just want to share this, Josh.
All right. Anybody else got any final thoughts on
Yeah.
FedNow?
That was really awesome, Brendan. You kind of oftentimes when I'm looking at things, right, and I'm getting kind of an idea of like, hey, there's something going on here, right? As you said there, it's kind of like this is specifically not a CBDC. Why do you feel like that's so important to throw in there? It's almost like you're planning something, right? I want people to understand that when you keep your eyes open, right, be aware of what's going on. You can get a little bit overly excited sometimes, like, oh, this is happening, oh, DeFi only, right? So so screw the government. They're making making regulations. I don't want that. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of do want it actually a little bit. Ultimately, guys, you need to be open to this. This is something that we are going to be needing for the future. Remember, in the perfect storm theory here, what we have going on is security. If there is some sort of call or some sort of like law making that's coming out for regulations and all that has to do with security for the dum-dums, right? The normal retail. All right. You need to understand that this is going to be one of those situations where it could probably come true. All right. And it'll probably come true simply because, hey, this is what you need for mass adoption. And regardless of what you think about how crypto should be, mass adoption is coming, and it's most likely going to come in the form first of CBDCs, hilariously enough. And then people are going to get pissed off over that, start a revolution, go over to this crypto thing, and or it's just going to be the companies alone creating security over there with like spot ETFs and stuff like that. So yeah, anybody else got anything?
I just wanted to say, like, when on their little website where they're talking like, hey, just so you know, this is not a central bank digital currency. It's like, a big old fucking wink right there. That one meme. But that was all I got.
Yeah, just my final thoughts on this, and we could probably wrap it up here because we're going on 2 hours. But even if this thing inevitably comes to pass, where the government says, look, if you want our fast and instant payment system, then the only way that you're going to be able to use FedNow is to use our CBDC. Look, at the end of the day, if you are completely opposed to doing something like that, the best thing that you could do is to vote with your money, right? And so if you and I and everybody here, all of us agree that that's probably not the direction that we want to head, then we're just not going to use it. Right. The same way that if there's a company, right? If there's a company, for example, this whole thing that happened with Bud Light, or the shenanigans that's happening with Disney. Oh, what are people doing? Well, they're not buying into those companies, right? They're not giving Budweiser their money. They're not giving Disney their money, right? When sports companies and, for example, like the NBA goes on its woke agenda, what happens? People stop watching and their viewership tanks. Right, the most powerful voting mechanism that you could possibly use, aside from actually going out there and voting on the polls, is to vote with your dollar. All right, and so if they're trying to make it so that they're forcing the usage of CBDCs onto you, then the best thing that you could do is not use it, right? And what's the alternative? Well, use crypto, right? So and find any which way, because there are going to be companies that still exist that will allow you to use alternative methods of payment, right? Because they're going to be in the same boat as us. We don't want to use this central bank digital currency. Right? And so those companies are going to pop up, right? The same way that there are companies. Well, here's a good example, right? There are companies now, right? There's a lot of people who are like, hey, look, we want to be able to support companies that manufacture here in the U.S. There are companies like that all over the United States, and people that want to support U.S. manufacturing, take their business and give it to them. It's the same concept, right? And I know it might be a bit difficult to accomplish that, right? Especially if you have if the opponent that you're facing is the U.S. government, is it going to be an easy battle? No, absolutely not. Right. But I mean, if it was easy, then would it be something worth fighting for? I don't think so. Right. And so vote with your dollar. That's probably the best way that you're going to fight it. right? Because people pay attention when money doesn't flow into something, right? So, I mean, look what happened with Budweiser, right? There, a lot of people got fired. Mr. Dillon, or I guess Miss Dillon, whatever her name is, I think fled the United States. So people pay attention to this kind of stuff, man, because money talks, right? And so you vote with your dollar.
All right, AJ, I'm gonna keep the conversation with you. We're kind of getting to that time where we're going to be closing it out. If you could let everyone know where they can find you, what you're working on, and some exciting things that they have to look forward to around the corner.
Yes, sir. So aside from the stuff that we do here on Sundays, me and Josh are going to be releasing part 2 of our technical analysis fundamental series. As far as what you can expect from me, I'm most likely going to be doing a lot more individual technical analysis on coins that people just want to know about, or coins that I'm interested in. If you're in our Telegram chat and you have coins that you want my specific input on, you're more than welcome to join and throw it in there, and then I will do the analysis for you. Where you can find me on Instagram at agent_JSCHROTH, and then on Twitter at _P90Hex, all of which will be linked in our descriptions. So that's it for me, man. Thank you guys as always for hanging out with us for 2 hours straight.
All right.
You're muted, my friend.
Yeah. I clicked it, didn't come off. But yeah, so yeah, I want to also just thank everybody for spending the time with us. You know, this show isn't possible without people that enjoy the content. So thank you for asking questions in the chat. Thanks for being active. You know, we do have a Telegram group. So if you want to join us there, it's free to join, and you can ask questions. You can see real-time news and things that we're talking about. It's just a way for all of us to be connected as a community and learn together and grow together. You can find me at anonymous_bean on Twitter. And, you know, I don't post a lot yet, but there'll be some good content coming through there. Another thing that I want to mention, just I'm going to be starting some DR insights on new coins, new cryptocurrencies, not ones that I'm necessarily invested in. Obviously, we don't recommend buying any coin, but just some new things that are happening within the market, and bringing some new opportunities to you. I do want to send, you know, we talked a couple shows ago about how do you get involved and find like-minded people in the community. Well, there are crypto events all over the country and the world. Cardano is a coin. I do hold a little bit of Cardano. I do like it, so I just want to just say that up front. But they have their national summit in November 2nd to the 4th in Dubai. But in conjunction with their summit, they have really amazing events in major cities around the world. So like in the United States, I know Miami, New York, LA, Vancouver, and Canada, and plenty of other cities. I don't know them all, and plenty of other cities around the world. And so all you have to do is sign up for the events. They're free to go to. There's usually some sort of watch party. There's usually some speakers, but it's a fantastic way to meet other people within the crypto community in your city, and also network and just learn. I will be attending the conference in Miami, the networking event in Miami, and also hoping to cover some of that for the show. You know, we'll cover anything that's crypto related, any coins, even if we don't potentially, if we do or do not invest in them. We just want to bring you the current news and the current information that's within the industry. That's what I got.
Hey guys, so yeah, as of right now, we've got the first part of the LPing special that we've been doing. Quite frankly, there is a ton of information in there. So I'll be getting that first part tomorrow, or out to on our channel tomorrow, which ultimately has to do with the Phantom ecosystem. And I also know we've also got the Optimism ecosystem all loaded up as well. So and then we're also going to be filming the Pulse Chain ecosystem along with Icosa and Hedron tomorrow as well. So the way I'm going to set this up is I'm basically going to be releasing them every single day, each ecosystem, right? And then at the very end, we're going to wrap it up, the entire LPing, farms, strategies, everything with actual legitimate strategies that we all in the DGN Roundtable have been using, have been very successful with. Also, with some that we'll mention that we have not been successful with. But yeah, so that's coming up. So this entire week, look out for that because it's going to be a big deal. We're going to be doing a lot of this. Hilariously enough, like the very beginning, it was just me, Tracker, and Jeff, right? And we're just kind of going through our vast knowledge on that at this point. Like we have a lot of knowledge, maybe too much. But yeah, no, coming in, we've got Will and Billy, who's going to be joining us Monday here or tomorrow to record some more. So there's going to be a lot of knowledge being dumped around there. If you, quite frankly, if you're not going to watch those videos, stay poor, because I prefer to have a money printer, just printing me retirement money. If you don't want that, then don't watch us. Okay. But otherwise, hey, maybe you would like to retire sometime. So yeah, go ahead, do that. Right. If you have any questions about any of this stuff too, because a lot of the things that we talk about can be just a little bit scary. Right. If you really do want to get some questions, make sure everything is good, right? Then go ahead, join our Telegram group. Again, it's free and everything. We're all in there. Be a part of the conversation. We have these conversations in that group constantly that we have right here, right? Join up, be a part of it. You can ask us some questions. Hey, we'll probably put it on the show. Not even going to lie. So what you got there, Will?
So I got nothing really in the whole pipeline as far as crypto goes. Like Nate said earlier, I'm going to be on the show tomorrow talking with my subject matter expertise is mostly icosahedron. And so I will chime in for that portion of the conversation. Other than that, I'm just going to be a little fly on the wall. But you can follow me on Twitter at Jagdpanzer auf E100, and I'll occasionally post about cryptocurrency events there. Just mostly like retweeting stuff that Richard Hard posts or things that Sami posts, and occasionally talking about my thoughts and feelings on the world and everything. But that is all that I have. Back to you, Mr. Chocolate Taint.
All right. Again, we want to thank everybody that was here live with us. That's why we do this show. We love having an awesome community that we're building. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being in the chat, for asking the questions, and just for being a part of our show. Again, my name is Josh. You guys can find me on Twitter at Chocolate Taints. That's where you guys can find me. As far as what I got coming up, whatever anybody on the show needs to produce, or whatever you guys are, whatever anybody asks me to do, I try to make myself available. So I don't know what I got coming up, but it could be 3 or 4 things this week. So it really depends on, what the other panelists need, if they need anything. So that's kind of my role here in all of this. So, but again, everything we say, remember, guys, it's not financial advice. All right. This is financial education. Make sure you guys, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, get a part of our community, get on our Telegram, check the link in the description. It's clickable. Just go ahead and click on it and join it and become a member. And with that being said, we thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We will be back maybe sometime this week, but definitely we'll be back on Sunday, 8 o'clock. But make sure you hit that notification bell. Because we could come up with a live stream at any time if we feel like doing it. So, but with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys so much. You guys have a good night. See you next time.